All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday as people start to trickle in here. Thank you so much for joining. We have another episode of Just Shilling here, another great guest as usual, and Kelsey McGuire. And we're going to get to learn all about her and what she's doing with Shardeum. I did post earlier just a little brief summary about the organization, some of the cool things that they're working on. But really, really excited to have this conversation today. So before we do get into it, folks, just want to go over some quick ground rules. The first thing that we will never do here is talk about anything that is financial advice related, and anything that's probably a little bit too controversial for a family dinner. We'll probably avoid that here. We do like to keep it spicy, but nothing too crazy. So without further ado, Kelsey, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on today. It's a beautiful Friday in the Bay Area where I'm based today.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'm in Boston, and it's actually a pretty nice day. It's been oppressive for the last week or so, but it is summertime. So you're originally based in NYC, and I believe it was 2016, 2017. You kind of started to hear some rumbles about crypto from larger institutions. So let's bring it back before we start to the present day and tell us a little bit about that time and what was going through your mind.
Absolutely. So those years in New York City were fantastic for getting a little bit of an intro to Web3 and crypto. I had a number of friends that were more in traditional finance. They worked for different banks and those types of institutions. And I started hearing a little concern around blockchain technology because they were trying to get a handle on it. And some of those larger institutions were starting to put together small teams to investigate. And that's certainly intriguing when those types of groups are wondering what's going
Yeah,
on.
it's like what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah, because you're just like, okay, if the banks are kind of intrigued slash concerned enough, that's certainly something that I also want to dig into a little bit and explore. So I had been working in more of the beauty and fashion industries, doing similar work around, communities, partnerships, branding, marketing, that giant umbrella of activities. But I was really interested in trying to pivot more into tech. And the timing just worked out really well, where all of these conversations around blockchain technology were happening around the same time that I was looking to make a change.
Nice, nice. Now, we're gonna learn a little bit more about your journey, but I believe it was back in Soho you went to your first crypto event. So tell us a little bit about that, and what was it really that sparked your interest in actually being in this industry?
Yeah, it was interesting enough. We almost made it into a little crypto event because it was this fashion industry party with champagne and all of that sort of thing in Soho. And I went there. I was working at kind of a luxury beauty brand at the time that was pretty niche. And met someone there that told me about Consensus, the Ethereum focused
Yeah.
company. And that's intriguing. And I think what really helped with that is you're not only learning a little bit from someone that actually was full time in the industry, but it humanizes things. You're like, oh, this other person at the same party is now working in this industry. It feels much more real and much more attainable when you can actually talk to someone in the industry instead of just have ideas about it. And that really changed everything. And I started doing a little bit more research on Consensus, on Ethereum, and gave myself a little crash course in Web3 and blockchain technology from what I could piece together that existed online at that time.
It's amazing. And were you able to use any kind of transferable skills coming from the beauty and fashion world to help you get into blockchain and crypto?
Absolutely. And I think this is a huge one and such a good question because I firmly believe that almost everyone has transferable skills.
Yes.
Just because you don't have experience in Web3, crypto, blockchain, a lot of us use those terms interchangeably, at least when talking from a job perspective,
Indeed.
doesn't mean that you don't have a place. I'm sure that you can bring something to the table. And for me, it was the work I had done with different strategic partnerships, with go to market strategies, with kind of the creative side of experiential marketing and crafting these narratives and trying to help people understand and really feel something around what you're doing, all of that translated really well into the work I ended up doing in Web3. So I just really encourage people to kind of think about the strengths and what they bring to the table. And I'm pretty darn sure that there's something that will work for you in Web3 as well.
Yes, you just have to be consistent. That's one thing as well. So tell us just a little bit about your journey into actually getting your first quote unquote full time role in the industry, and what was that like?
Yeah, you know what? It was a little bit nerve-wracking at times. I wanted to make this change, but I looked at my own background and knew that I could bring a lot to the organization, but I really didn't know if other people would see that. I didn't have that traditional finance background. I didn't have a background that was working in, other areas of tech for many, many years. I'd done some consulting, but that's different from a whole career in tech. And, I also didn't have that, you know, incredible sounding Ivy League education that I know a lot of Web3 projects were also focused on. So I was a little bit nervous about it, but very excited. I was privileged to have something to fall back on. I hadn't left my other job yet when, of course, I was starting to explore. So all of those things came together, and I really tried to put together, some documents and notes and did as much research as I could to prepare myself for the conversations. It ended up being, I don't know, maybe I can't remember now, but like 4 or 5 different conversations or rounds of interviews to get in, and just trying to approach it with everything that I knew and could leverage from my old other jobs and my past previous career into trying to translate that to something that would mean, a good hire for consensus at that time.
Yeah. And what are some common misconceptions about joining the Web3 space? I know that you just alluded to it a little bit, but how do you address these misconceptions, especially when speaking to newcomers or people that are maybe even potentially interested about the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a big misconception can be that you had to be in the space already or you had to be early. Maybe you had to buy Bitcoin back in the day, and none of that is true. We're still early. You can join now and still be someone who's joining early, in my opinion. And you don't have to have that technical background. You don't have to have come from a background where maybe because of circumstance or research or you had disposable income back in the day that you could risk it and be involved in the industry earlier. It's okay to not have that background. And in fact, it's great for other people to join that didn't have that same exact experience as some of the early joiners in the industry. And I know that's a big generalization. Not everyone followed that exact path, but it shouldn't be something that stands in your way. And yeah, you don't have to have studied necessarily computer science, although that would have been really helpful. And I kind of looking back, that would have been great for me. But, and you don't have to have gone to the, flashiest, best sounding schools to really carve out a spot here. I don't think if there's a project, and I think that this has gone away a little bit, but there was a period of time where I saw projects just wanting to recruit from specific institutions. And I think that really narrows what we're looking at in terms of
Yeah.
building communities, because the people building the tech and working at these organizations really shape its future. So we want people from different backgrounds engaged in
Yes.
creating this, Web3 future.
Yes. And that's interesting, that word community. It consistently comes up in conversations that I have with people in the space. And I think that that's something that's very unique and very beautiful about this industry, is that the community does matter a lot. And we're going to touch upon that a little bit more later in the conversation. But I want everyone just to get a little bit more familiarized with Shardeum, what they're all about, and then kind of help it break us down as well to on kind of your day to day, and what are some of the things that excites you most about your role.
Absolutely. So Shardium, I won't give you guys a full spiel here, but really definitely check us out. It's been such an exciting journey with them. They're L1. So for folks that are a little bit newer to Web3, that's really kind of the foundation layer of this technology. So I think of it when you're pouring a foundation for a house, you want it really, really great. You want it strong so you can build whatever you want on top of it. So we're building that foundation piece. So our website has so much more information for all different levels of technical understanding, but at its core, we're an awesome foundation for projects to build on. And our day to day varies a lot over here. Our team is spread out all over the world. I work with amazing colleagues in India, of course, in New York City, across the rest of the US, and other parts of Europe as well. So it creates a lot of interesting challenges at times when it comes to time zones, but I think that Shardeum has a lot of folks that are working on the project and contributing that are just so invested and excited about what we're building that seems to really help bridge gaps that you would see when it comes to siloing and challenges with communicating across different time zones. So it's hard to say what exactly a typical day would be. It can be anything from having these wonderful conversations on a podcast or creating content and videos to drafting a go to market strategy and working with our amazing team on what the next steps are for execution. Conversations and collaboration with the more technical side of our organization and understanding what our timelines are looking like and how to like deeply collaborate around the communication to the community and really what we're putting out there. So it varies. Also, some of the creative direction stuff, we did a brand refresh and we created these characters. So it
Nice.
varies a whole lot, but that keeps it exciting.
I think so. It really does. There's never a dull day in this space for sure. And adding on to that a little bit more, Kelsey, how do you approach community building in such a rapidly evolving industry?
Absolutely. So I think it's really important to have overall goals and a high level strategy set. But I think one big thing that people sometimes miss when it comes to community building is that it takes a lot of effort and work, and that the people on the community team are kind of on the front line. So if something's not working, people are mad at them. So I really do think it's very important to think about how to support the people that are really sort of executing on the day-to-day strategy within the community, and make sure that you're also providing the community with consistent updates whenever possible and not just fluff. No one likes to feel like they're just being put off or their questions are ignored. So it can be really hard finding the appropriate balance there, but setting out that high level strategy ahead of time hopefully allows people to sort of have something to fall back on and understand what the priorities are when it comes to building those communities and selecting the appropriate channels, whatever the size of your project may be.
That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people out there, one of the ways that they can break into the space, quote unquote, is by being involved with the community, right? So, what are your thoughts on the role of a community manager, and do you see them as kind of as a niche role, and are they kind of like the unsung heroes of Web three?
Yeah, and I completely agree with your statement around, being active in a community is a great way to start, almost your pre-career in Web3. And
Yeah,
community managers are the unsung heroes. I think that there are individuals that are often, if you have good community managers, so engaged, working extremely hard, are trying to manage expectations, are answering questions, are sharing information, are constantly trying to be creative in their approaches. And I think that sometimes it's a role that is vastly undervalued. I think I see roles that are much flashier that sometimes pay significantly more. And I'm not saying this is the case everywhere, but certain companies, and again, this is not Shardium, but projects I've worked with and seen in the past have had, BD or quote unquote strategy people that are paid, you know, 3 times or more than the community managers. And it's fascinating to me because some of them are sort of just chilling. And you have these community managers really, on the front lines trying to navigate a very complex environment. And again, like this isn't everywhere and it's certainly not speaking to the current situation, but I think that it's one of those roles that just doesn't get the credit that it fully deserves. What do
And
you think? Have you
I,
kind of seen that before too?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, once again, it's so important to be aware of the people that are actually involved in this space at that level. And I was just thinking about this as well too, because I believe that Shardeum's, I don't know if it was your Discord or some other channel, but 550,000 members, right? So like the
Yes.
community managers, I know that your role ties into that a little bit. Like, how do you manage to keep such a large community engaged and even active? I mean, that must be a daunting feat.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it, to a degree, comes down to these roles need to be staffed. So that means not just one person who's in charge of every single aspect of community and marketing. There should be one or more people that are entirely focused on the community. And this also only works if those individuals are then also collaborating with the technical side of the team so they can set those realistic expectations with the community. They're, connected with folks like me in my role so that we're working together on the overall strategy and making sure we're staying consistent with the messaging as well. So it really takes a whole village in my mind. To make sure that we're maintaining momentum when it comes to the community channels and really engaging. And we've rolled out a few different initiatives from, of course, trying to update and design really great FAQs. And we're still, of course, working on that to keep the community engaged and really understanding how to seek answers for their questions that maybe can't be addressed on an individual basis. For questions that aren't a part of that, really
Yeah.
getting in there. We've been experimenting with different types of media and creating videos and clips and really just trying to meet people where they are so that they can engage with us at the level that they want to, whether it's, tasks for incentivized testnet or it's understanding the basics of Web3 and Shardeum. We're trying to, really curate to all of those interests and skill levels.
Nice. So this is interesting because I do go back and I looked at our notes when we had our first conversation, and we first chatted about having this podcast back on the 23rd of May, and here we are, right? So
We're finally here.
yeah, we are finally here. This just doesn't happen overnight. So how do you balance the fast-paced demands of your work in crypto with your personal life and your well-being?
That can be challenging. Um, and I think the interesting thing is your workplace will have a huge impact on this. Like I found that in some roles, it felt like that just wasn't possible. And I think that if you're in that type of role, you really have to have, a come to Jesus moment and understand that maybe that's not where you want to stay. And that's the hard realization. I think sometimes places are great for your career, but they won't necessarily work for you long term. And it's kind of similar earlier in my career as well. It's much harder to set boundaries because I think it does come down to boundaries. What are the hours that you're working? What are the hours that you're almost, more or less on call, available to answer questions? And being really clear on that and sometimes muting Slack. Um, Making sure that you can trust your team if you're working across different time zones, like, hey, if I'm on an airplane or if I'm sleeping, there's going to be someone awake that can handle something, or and that the team understands if there's a quote unquote emergency, which honestly my definition of an emergency is extremely narrow. I
Yeah.
don't want to be a reactive, everything is just deserves panic of the highest order, but more like, hey, if XYZ things happen, call me. Otherwise, this is something we can manage during our different normal working hours. So it's a balancing act, and it's also a culture fit with different organizations and projects because some simply will not respect boundaries.
Yeah, and this is wonderful transition because, I've actually I was doing my own research, and I had seen a podcast that you had done previously, and it was talking about like the important how important is it to build teams that complement your skills, and how does that contribute to the overall company success and also your personal success?
Absolutely. I think that there are certain things that people like when you think about you and your career, you're like, this is the thing that more or less only I can do. This is the unique thing I bring to the table. And I think really seeking to understand that and how you can grow that. Of course, you can't just ignore everything else, but building out this team that, hey, I really want support and collaboration when it comes to, say parts of project management or, this part of the media strategy. It really builds a much better team because people understand why they're there. They're doing what their strengths are on a day-to-day basis. And no one feels as, I've seen it at places almost more territorial because there's too much overlap. People are understanding and really celebrating what they can do, and it of course benefits the project or organization immensely because you have people working together as components, and you can almost picture a bunch of gears kind of turning together rather than just a pile and none of them really connect or can operate at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And what are some of the best practices for just balancing all the components of your role specifically? I mean, product development, go-to-market strategies, community building, culture, driving user growth, mass adoption. I mean, how do you kind of all keep this in order?
Absolutely. So on a super granular level, I mean, this doesn't cover everything, but I am obsessive with my calendar. So that means blocking off chunks of time for various tasks that are the focuses for the day. But it can even be like, okay, I've blocked off this amount of time for creating templates, resources, which help a lot. I've blocked off this amount of time for taking all my calls for the day and meetings. And this is the amount of time for follow ups. And for me, having that on the calendar and knowing I want to get through all of those things in that day is really helpful because I've also had roles where I didn't do that. You get so swept up. You're like, oh, I've been on calls for 8 hours today and
Yeah.
I had all these things that it's also hard to then look back and be like, okay, what was I doing on that day? Because you can get so exhausted and burnt out after those patterns that
Mhm.
it can be hard to articulate exactly how you were making progress and what you wanted to accomplish when it came to moving towards your goals or meeting your KPIs.
Nice. Now, this is kind of more going a little bit back in time. Anyone that's been following the space, especially if you've been able to work in the space, last year it was challenging, right? The industry as a whole, we were just dealing with so much negativity and so many things, but here we are, we survive. And I think that is something that is a skill. A lot of people just have that perseverance to be able to be successful in this industry. So I'm kind of like a always glass half full. I'm always an optimist. And how do you or how can a bear market be a perfect opportunity to cut through the noise and be more intentional when it comes to marketing and communication efforts?
Yes, absolutely. And it really is an opportunity because slightly fewer people will just be screaming at everyone else about whatever their latest NFT project or quick money grab might be. And I'm not saying all NFT projects are like that, but during one of the bull runs that I participated, that I was working in Web3 during, all of a sudden everyone had something. So it's really hard to cut through all the noise. You can get a little bit more drowned out during those times. I think when it's a little bit quieter, those are times to really hone in on refine your messaging, test different conversations and messages with your community, because usually the people that are still sticking around are the ones that are really deeply engaged. Your numbers might be a little lower across the board, but those are individuals that tend to be a little bit more interested in the technology over just trying to make a few bucks off of something. And for me, the focus has always been, at least especially with marketing and communications, on the technology. Like, what is interesting about this? What can it do for you beyond just yes, price speculation, which we stay away from?
Indeed, indeed. And this is a little bit more personal, but how do you navigate, the complex political narratives around crypto? I mean, just overall comments. A lot of the mainstream media, as we were just kind of alluding to before, it's not always painting our industry in the best light. So, especially coming from someone, with your background, where your parents worked in the government. So, what's it like for you just to kind of deal with this more on a personal level? How do you interact with friends and family, and how do you all keep it positive when maybe there's a lot that's coming out that says it's not?
Absolutely. I mean, how am I navigating it? Like a lot of tension headaches, a lot of one new white hairs that I didn't have before.
Uh,
Um, but overall, it's a lot of it's trying to keep my frustration and anger in check because we do have a very negative association and at times, like Washington isn't really understanding, I think, more of the tech side and how exciting this can be. Speaking about the United States, for the United States and the types of jobs, and that we're not a bunch of people just yelling at each other on Twitter. And so it's definitely challenging, and it's also been very challenging and frustrating to see candidates that I am absolutely not aligned with being the ones that are supportive of the industry I work in. And in fact, it's a little disheartening. And I do think it's going to cause challenges down the line when it comes to, if I'm talking to my friends or family or trying to tell people, like, hey, this is an awesome industry to work in.
yeah.
It's a lot of people are finding it extra off putting, which is not something that I would wanted to have to grapple with, but is kind of the reality of the current situation.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just that, like, even the fact that crypto is being brought up on a national scale when it comes to politics. I mean, I know that you can probably, appreciate this as well too, but when I first started to get into the space, like most people, I played around with this stuff. I invested a little bit. But I remember some of my first experiences, like I had to like get a transfer from my bank to go to a crypto exchange, or either I had to buy it somewhere else and then send it to the exchange and then buy crypto. It was just like this crazy convoluted process, and now banks want to custody crypto. So, moving fast forward, it's just amazing all the things that happen in such a short amount of time. And while we are here, I think this is a good time to break. If there's anyone in the audience that has a question, please do raise your hand. I'll do my best to bring you up and you can contribute to the conversation or ask Kelsey a question. But while we're waiting for that as well, too, just looking back at your career so far, and I know that you have so much more to do, but what are some of the like standout moments for you that are most pivotal and rewarding?
Yeah, I think that some of the more standout moments were a lot of the creative campaigns and the strategies and seeing those come to life. I think working with a great team around DevCon when I was at Consensus, and that was in Osaka, and we brought this giant garden scavenger hunt to life where a lot of our different projects at that time, they're called spokes, but more or less were portfolio companies in a way, had these beautiful, huge illustrated characters, and everything was designed to get product feedback and kind of humanize the different projects. And of course, there was a lot that happened afterwards with follow up and kind of these retention efforts, but it worked really well. And to have something that you've collaborated on with so many people come to life and be so real right in front of you was
Hmm.
really rewarding, because a lot of what we do, we're talking about these ideas and concepts and the technology, and you don't always get to see something or hold something in your hands that was created as a result of your efforts. So that was really gratifying. And at Shardeum, we've created a series of different characters, and we launched an entire brand refresh that performed really well. And it's creating these things that are helping people learn more about the technology and Web3 and making it a little bit, hopefully, more fun and approachable.
So,
And that's all been extremely rewarding when it came to some of these opportunities. Also, going on, I think, some more of these types of podcasts and having these conversations was very, very, very much out of my comfort zone just about a year ago. But, being able to now have these types of conversations and connect with people and really kind of get the message out there a little bit more about Web3 and that people of different backgrounds can also sort of jump into this space has been really gratifying.
Yeah, it's funny because I had never done a podcast in my life until about August, September of last year, and I believe this is episode number 47. So it's just like,
Wow.
wow, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable in this industry, and a lot of it you may not know what you're doing at first, but if you have good guidance and you have a supportive team, I think a lot of the beauty of this space is depending on the organization, of course, but I think that you have a lot of autonomy, and it's an industry where you can be proactive and you know create initiatives, and as long as it has a sense and it has purpose and you can do these things, which is really cool in this space. So those are some of the wins, and the things that you found very rewarding. Looking back, were there any mistakes that you made? I know that obviously mistakes can turn to learning opportunities, but were there any major mistakes that you can kind of think about in hindsight that you wish you didn't make, or maybe that you could advise others not to do?
I feel like one of the main things, and unfortunately, I couldn't separate this from the success that I've experienced, but not having appropriate boundaries when it came to job, meaning just working extremely, extremely long hours, being on the verge of burnout for months and months and months, feeling that kind of burnout. That was, I think, in a way, a mistake because I wasn't doing great, but I think that it also probably helped me get to where I am. So I am not advocating for burning yourself out, but I do think that being extremely mindful of boundaries is a positive thing, and hopefully we can shift work culture overall at least a little bit in that direction, because it's not worth really feeling like that. But now that I've kind of more or less on the other side, we still work a whole lot, but it's not that I'm on the verge of burnout all the time type of feeling.
Yes, and you learn a lot of things along the way, how to maintain that time, because time is very important, obviously the greatest resource that we have. And, you know, talk a little bit about the role of a mentor, and how important is that to have someone that mentors you in this industry, and also maybe talk a little bit about some experiences that you may have had to be mentors for others.
Absolutely. I think that it's great to put yourself out there, make yourself available for calls and conversations when people reach out. I've had folks follow up with me after these types of conversations. And I'm always happy to jump on a call and just kind of, bounce ideas around or discuss what an interesting way into Web3 could be or what next steps are. So I do think it's really important. I think it's great if people do reach out to individuals, whether it's me or someone else. You don't really have anything to lose. If someone politely says, "Hey, I'm so sorry, I can't talk right now," or please, follow up in, a couple months or next quarter, that's fine. I think it's great that, to just not take things personally there. For me, it's been about really establishing a small community as well of people that I've worked with off and on over the years that we can connect. And it's great for the projects I work with because a lot of them know what's happening in different areas of the space. And then it's great from a just understanding how they're navigating leadership roles in their organizations and sort of in a way mentoring each other. So that's a positive thing that can really help you kind of keep going through rough patches if you have them in your career as well.
Yeah, I think, just having a support system, obviously professionally in your team, that's important, but just outside of that as well too. It's really important to have that, because, the road's not always smooth. There are sometimes bumps along the journey, but having a really strong kind of just, small community of like-minded individuals and even people that are going to be challenging some of your thoughts, things of that nature, that's really, really important as well too. So kind of more so thinking about the future here, Kelsey. What do you think are some of the biggest hurdles and opportunities when it comes to mass adoption of just crypto and blockchain technology at large?
Yeah, user experience. Things are hard and kind of convoluted. And if it's not easier than what we currently have, like people won't use it. It can't be the same. It has to be a little bit easier, better, more streamlined, be solving really real problems. Like I've seen some interesting use cases with remittances and a pretty streamlined user experience around that, but it still gets clunky at times when it comes to you have to connect your wallet, you have the scary seed phrase and all of these
Oh,
pieces.
yeah.
That's what we need to work on, and that's a huge opportunity. Luckily, I see a lot more focus on that. I just got back from ECC in Brussels, and there are a lot of conversations about this, needing to be done. People are focused and working on it. And that's positive because a few years ago, I feel like it was, oh, well, we're just going to build the technology and it's so amazing that people will see that and want to engage with it. And people just simply won't be inconvenienced. So I think we just need to come to terms with the reality and focus in on user experience.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of just, in your view, how will decentralization kind of shape the future of our financial system and other industries, in your opinion?
I hope we stay pretty decentralized. I think that there's probably, I wouldn't say I'm like a complete decentralization maxi, like fully decentralized or nothing, because I feel like that there's interesting use cases that lie a little more in the middle. But overall decentralization when it comes to people, when it comes to where the projects are being created, is absolutely key. Do we want to build something that's different and addresses more of the real challenges people are facing, or do we want to build something that's an exact copy of the current financial system? I think the difference will be decentralization. So it's something that we definitely do need to continue to focus on and make sure that we're checking ourselves and not falling into the exact same patterns that we currently have with traditional finance.
Oh, absolutely. And what do you see as like some of the next big breakthroughs in Web3, and how is Shardium preparing for this?
So I think that with Shardium and one of the big breakthroughs, coming up is we're really focused on solving the trilemma, which is having something that is, decentralized, scalable, as well as secure. And what that means also is low gas fees forever. So, how we're focusing in on that is really addressing all of that and making Web3 much more accessible, where you don't have to worry that down the line everything will suddenly spike up and suddenly you can't participate anymore. So
Hmm.
that's really exciting. And, we're heading towards mainnet now. So it's a really thrilling time to be a part of all of this.
Yes, that's awesome. And are there any other kind of upcoming projects or initiatives that you're involved with, or that you're most excited about, and why?
I would say since I am so focused on this journey to mainnet with Shardium right now, that is taking up a lot of my time and thinking and sort of creative energy overall. So I'd say focusing in on that. One of the exciting things that I've been looking at is our bug bounty program. So we've been working with more of the technical side of the organization and really figuring out how to launch an effective program that will make sure that everything is as secure as possible for our launch. So I just love all of these different sort of strategic activities that will prepare us for the best possible mainnet launch down the line. And really seeing like those white hat hackers get in there and find like challenging little bits of code that need to be addressed, and then being able to resolve those. Use, of course, the tech team. I'm not personally going in there, I cannot take credit for that, but it's a really exciting process to be a part of.
And just overall, the team, give us just that insider's view. Overall, what's it like? Help us understand a little bit about the culture and maybe some things that people just wouldn't ever know from just face value or being able to look at, whatever's publicly available online.
Yeah, one thing that's really kind of struck me being at Shardium is the team, they're really kind. They're kind people. And so if I'm on a call, sometimes I'm up at 6 or 7 a.m. taking my first call. Everyone is just enjoyable to talk to about this. Not to say that I wouldn't value a little bit extra sleep, but it really just makes such a big difference. It's one of the most kind of kind and collaborative environments that I've ever worked in, and very receptive to new ideas, and generally to, if you put an idea out there and maybe it doesn't quite work, people, the team overall seems to not really take things too personally, which is very, very important, especially when you're working across so many different time zones. And I think that's kind of hard to see from the outside, probably, but I just really appreciate it, especially after working in so many other types of environments.
And what's that like working with, people in so many different time zones and different cultures and personalities? How does all of that come together, or is it just kind of work?
I think it's really kind of assuming good intent is key, because everyone has different communication styles, and that can vary a lot depending on, of course, where you're from, and how you were raised to communicate, and whether English is your first language or not. So I think just really trying to come from a place where you're understanding that everyone's on the same side, a little of that really, really goes a long way to smooth over any challenges. I think since I've been working with so many international teams now, I guess throughout my Web3 career, I've used to, okay, something that might come off as short or terse to our American ears is completely normal in other countries. So just understanding that really it's nothing personal, and this is people trying to collaborate, and just because they don't have a little smiley after their Slack message doesn't mean that they're being hostile, and that's something just good to remember across the board.
Oh, I know. These are words of wisdom. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey. As I mentioned before, I'm going to give folks in the audience. I know we have a little bit more of an intimate group here, but we are in the height of summer, so I definitely understand it. And quite frankly, I like to have a small group of people that are really passionate and care about this than a million people that really don't, right? So I appreciate everyone that took their time to be here. I believe this was a very great conversation, one that needed to be had. So thank you again, Kelsey, for sure. And any parting notes or anything that you want to leave with us? Anything going on internally with the team? Are you hiring? I know that mainnet's coming up. Or any events that you're going to be going to in the future? Anything that you're personally doing from side projects? And how best should people get in touch with you if they are interested in joining the team or collaborating or being a resource in any capacity?
Absolutely. So I'll be at in Tokyo end of August for STO Summit, I think ETH Tokyo and WebEx. So if you're going to be in Tokyo, definitely reach out. I think it's a great community over there. In terms of getting in touch with me, LinkedIn, if you reach out, send a little note. I'm happy to talk to you. I think we are, at least for my team and people that I'm collaborating closely with, will likely be looking at hiring post mainnet, but of course, always interested to hear from people, connect, have a little virtual coffee sometime, and yeah, take it from there. I think overall for Shardeum, going to shardeum.org, checking out our Twitter, everything's linked out from the main website. It's just a really good, colorful resource. So please check that out as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, everyone that joined. There's a million places that you could be on this Friday in the peak of summer, but you chose to be here, and that means so much. I really appreciate all of you and look forward to having you back again for these amazing, engaging conversations. We will be having some short clips uploaded to LinkedIn shortly, and then eventually get that full episode uploaded to YouTube. And for those of you that did not know that, we do have a YouTube channel at the Crypto Recruiters where our full videos are uploaded there. So if you want to go and check that out, that would be great. But once again, Kelsey, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And everyone else, have a great day and a safe weekend. Take care. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.